So today we're going to talk about how I use these to create these to help me design my van. In case you haven't seen the last video, you should go watch it, but long story short, I bought a van and I'm going to build it out to kind of go explore the country, do some hunting, and look for a new place to find some land and start a homestead. So, first things first, we're going to take a step back and kind of go through all the criteria that I had when coming up with a design for the build, go through how I went through the build process, and then kind of take you through the steps of all of the different prints that I have. So let's get started there. So just in case you're not familiar with these vans, I figured we'd come out and kind of walk through the area and give an overview of what they're all about. So if you recall from the last video, this is kind of the canvas that we have to work with. And it seems spacious when it's like this, but it gets much more compact once you're actually in it. So for instance, this is 56 inches across the top. Now down at the bottom, because it kind of bows out and then back in, we have a max width of 70 inches. But you got to remember that's frame to frame. So we got to put insulation and wood paneling and all of those good stuff to make it feel homey. So you don't actually have 70 inches. And then as far as the distance goes, there's about 130 inches to the back of these seats. So you don't want to use all 130 inches because that'll get tight, the chairs can't move, etc. So it's not a very big space that we're working with. All right, and so now that we kind of have an idea of the space, let's talk about the things that need to be included. I started off this whole process with thinking, what are the main activities that I'm going to be doing in the van when I'm not driving? Because clearly driving is the main thing that you'll do. So the first use case, sleeping. Got to dedicate enough space and whatever to sleeping. The second activity is going to be working from the road. So the only way this whole process works is if I have a nice enough setup here to work remotely while I'm traveling. I just don't have enough vacation days to just go off for months at a time to do this. So I got to be able to work from the road. The third thing is cooking. So those are kind of the main activities I'll be doing when I'm not driving. And then of course, like there's going to be activities when I'm outside of the vehicle, hiking, hunting, exploring, etc. So it's not just like, what am I doing total? It's what are the activities that this space needs to account for. So once we've got that done, the nice to haves would be kennel space for my dogs, because it's just generally safer if they're in a kennel or a crate, as some people call them. It kind of just contains their movement and then gives them some bonus protection when, heaven forbid, there's an accident. Secondly, a shower. I would love to be able to wash off and rinse off, and I'd love to have the shower indoors. I know you can do outdoor showers, but I'd prefer it indoors so that I can use it in colder weather. The next item would be, I'd love to have the fridge at eye height. When I watch a bunch of van tours, they always do them as like drawers or on the floor, and it just seems kind of irritating to constantly have to bend down into them, and especially if you want to get something at the back. So I'd love to have the fridge at eye height. The next kind of big thing is, like, I would love to have everything automated, and that's kind of my goal, and I think I can do that regardless, but I have to have a big enough battery system that can manage all of that power draw. Now, some of those things are kind of like, they sip on power, it's not a big deal, but like a fridge and an air conditioner take a lot of power, so I gotta have space to have that size of a power system. The other thing that I've got to think about is, I will be consuming water, and I will have 2 dogs that are consuming water daily. So that's drinking, doing dishes, the dog's drinking, any bathing, showering. So I have to have a decent enough water reservoir to manage all of that for, let's say, a week at a time. I'd love to have a bed big enough that me and a girlfriend, future wife, and or the dogs could get into, so that it's decently wide. But I, in all of my planning, I think that's the sacrifice that I'll have to make first. And then beyond that, I'd love to have a nice air conditioner, nice heater. I've also got to have like place to store camera equipment, computer equipment, server equipment, dog food, pots and pans and cooking utensils and whatnot, clothing, first aid kit, guns, hunting equipment, dog training equipment. So, like, a lot of storage. And then eventually, I will also need to handle the outdoor, like the outside of the van. So, for that, I will need to be able to do a front bumper with a winch, lights, roof rack, solar, a bike rack, a tire carrier, and external storage, upgraded wheels and suspension, and whatever. Oh, and then I'll have to cut some holes potentially for windows, bump outs, roof fans, etc. So as you can see, there's a lot that I need to do. So let's head back inside and kind of go over the designs that I've toyed around with. So to kind of get started with this whole process, I just did very rudimentary prints. Everything's squared off, there's no rounded edges, the wheel wells are pretty straightforward. I put a little bit of care into these initial kennels just because it was easier to visualize. And then the very first print, as you can see, is also still very straightforward, very kind of blocky in shape. And its sole purpose was just to see, does a van design work? And this captures about 2% of the things that I need. It's got the kennels, it's got a place for me to sleep and work, but like it's very basic. So then I was like, I can put a little more effort into this. So I swapped this out and added a little bit more character to the floor plate. As you can see, the wheel wells have now become kind of rounded over. I added this little dent at the bottom of, this is where the rear doors are and they kind of curve in. So I kind of wanted to keep that in mind so that when I built things out, it kind of stayed a little further back. So kept this original design, kind of put it over where it was, but then I built out this, well, printed out this second little piece, and it is just very rudimentary. So I'm thinking there's going to be like a little bench seat to sit here. This is all kind of storage for clothing and whatnot, and then this would be kind of like gun storage in the back because it's more skinny and vertical. And then have a little cutout back here on, so it slides right in over the wheel well. And as you can see, it kind of works. It doesn't really add a whole lot. I mean, there's more storage, and I guess technically I could do something with this, but this is very narrow, very skinny. Doesn't work. So just kind of, nah. So then I was like, okay, let's get rid of this big blocky design, and I can add kind of more individual cabinet looking pieces. And so I started printing these out and trying to piece them together. But as you can see, these are different heights and the curvature is different. So what I realized, as you can see, this is how I prototype. This is how I work through a problem. I realized that I need a wall to kind of help me determine the height and curvature and just kind of get a better feel for it. So then I tried printing out a wall piece. It's got a cutout for the wheel well, but then it's also trying to put a little slot here, thinking that I could then snap this on, and then if I wanted to, I could pop it off, look inside, put it back on. As you can see, the tolerances weren't great. I didn't want to make this super thick. This kind of bowed. It's not the same length. It sucked. So that's when I tossed all of this and printed the first one of these. It is a full-on shell. So this is as close to the curvature as I can get with my printing abilities and architectural engineering skills. but it's like a pretty good representation of how much this kind of comes in at the top. So like as I'm placing, like let's say a fridge that's a certain depth, I know that if I put it into here, it'll stick out too far. So I have to put a little bit further to get more advantage of that curve. But the other thing that this does is it helps you kind of get a better feel for the space, because you can see where it starts to feel narrow if there's too many cabinets that are in close and all those different things. That being said, I printed this off and I started taking pictures of it and sending it to friends and just getting their quick feedback, and very quickly learned that black is not best for video. And that's when I printed off these in the different colors. So I did end up buying a second printer, the P1S. If you haven't seen my review on that, go check out the other channel. But it came with some colors. I also got some additional colors. I'm going to tell you these are not done by an interior designer. So as you see these different pieces coming through, they are horrendous when it comes to a color matchability. That being said, we're just going to keep progressing. So the first kind of step that I wanted to take was I wanted to figure out the bed situation. So if you're unfamiliar, there are generally two ways to sleep in. Do you like how I said black is horrible for camera and then I proceeded to continue talking about the black? All right, so generally speaking, in vans, there are two ways to sleep: north-south, east-west. If you do north-south, you take up more interior space, but you don't have to do any modifications and you kind of get a longer length. If you sleep east-west, if you're a rather short individual, it works just fine. If you're tall, you start to rub on these and then you have to get the kickouts. They're called flares. So those flares, they're handy. They give you, additional space, but they're also expensive and you kind of have to install them yourself. So there's pros and cons, and so I wanted to start thinking through, can I make everything that I want on that criteria list work without cutting those open? So the first step that I took now that I had this shell was figuring out a bed. So these are the bed options that I came up with. I kind of went with this one first. It kept with that original theme of keeping an aisle kind of going from the front of the van all the way to the back of the van. But it was a little deeper and a little shorter than that first iteration. This one, because this was super basic, but same orientation. So this is the driver's side wall, has a little bump out, cut out for the wheel well, and it just kind of sits there and gets a pretty decent mattress on it. I went up and measured a twin mattress that we have here in the house, and so this is pretty much a standard twin mattress, which kind of saves some costs in the future because you can buy them off the shelf. But as soon as you put this in a shell, you start to realize that it takes up a ton of space still. So it's not really all that beneficial. It does get you a fair amount of storage, but it's not necessarily the best solution. So then I said, okay, well, what if I go with the more traditional kind of sleep north to south like I was talking about, but I have space for kennels under the bed? It works pretty decently. It just kind of fits into the back. You can take these little new kennels. I found a different brand that's slightly smaller, and they fit in just fine. As you can see, there is some space to store your mechanicals, your electrical, those kind of things, and you get a really decent bed. But you kind of have no space on the passenger side, and this on the driver's side becomes really short to put in everything else on the list. So I quickly ruled out the big fat bed. It just wasn't going to work. So I ruled out the super deep bed, but I did like the idea of having the kennels under the bed. It allowed me to keep the kennels, kind of free up some wall space, and have like a decent bed. So I created this one, and it's pretty much just that same one, but slimmed down. The problem is I still am very narrow here. Like these two kennels take up pretty much the entire space between the wheel wells. So like all of the water and electrical has to kind of live in a very narrow, short area. So it's not exactly a great solution. So I kind of decided against it. I said, you know what? I don't think the kennels beneath there will work. but I'm getting more comfortable with the idea that I'll have kind of just a narrow bed and it'll sleep from east to west, so wall to wall rather than pointing towards the driver's seats. The question is, what did I want to do? So I came up with two ideas. One is kind of just a lower height bed. It's only 30 inches wide, which is kind of narrow, but it is doable. And it takes up, very little space in the back. So there's a big chunk of space for a water tank and a big chunk of space for battery system electrical. And then there's this big cavity in here. And I'm thinking, well, okay, maybe I can craft a kennel out of that. So then I said, I don't know about that. What if I made it a little higher so I got more storage? Maybe I could put a bike under here, make it work, still have those same kind of depths and cavities in there. So we kind of landed on this situation. As you'll see, when I go further into the design, it changes, somewhat, but this is roughly where I went with it. So we've kind of got that bed situated. Now we can start playing with the fun part, all of the walls. As you can see, I went hog wild when it came to printing all of the different walls. This is where it is fun and stressful because it's really fun being creative and trying to think of different layouts that you can do, but it's really stressful when you realize that oh, if I do this, I lose all of these other things, but if I put it over here, I can gain all of this, but I don't know if that makes the most sense from a plumbing electrical standpoint. And it just gets very overwhelming, bogged down, but you're also motivated to keep trying new designs just to see if something sparks your creativity. One of the original designs is this one. It involves the two kennels. This is a storage spot for dog food, training gear, device, collars, bowls, food, leashes, dummies, whatever. It's got a desk with a monitor, everything set up. This is where the fridge would go, and here's some drawers. Under here is where I would put the toilet, and it's kind of got everything in it. But as you can see, this is very cramped. And on the other side of the vehicle, so this is driver's side, passenger side, there is a galley. So it kind of gets cramped having your desk that deep into the van, if you will. But it did everything I needed. It has all of the space. It kind of checked a lot of boxes. In this design, the big letdown is there's no space for a shower. So then I kept kind of thinking, how could I do both? Takes me to this one, where I got rid of the kennels, put the shower in here, thinking that I could put the kennels under the bed, still have the desk, and then this just becomes a full kind of storage cabinet, because on the other side, I put the fridge up here. So kind of switches some things around, makes it work, but this only works if the kennels live under the bed, and that's why there's this cutout here so that there's room for the kennel door to swing. But as we just discussed with the beds, I didn't really like the kennels under the bed. There wasn't a lot of space. It kind of made some other things difficult. So then I said, what if I swap it and I put the kennels behind the desk? Then the front driver's seat can swivel around and this kind of becomes a dual-sided desk. And then this is closet storage. And then I have this back here, like I was talking about, fridge, cooktop, everything. And I kind of thought, well, maybe having two high cabinets towards the back would make it kind of look like a little separate room back there. Everything's kind of cordoned off. But because my bed is that narrow bed, that's the one I'm going with, it becomes a little claustrophobic, a little tight back there. And again, no shower. So then I started looking at designs with more shower space. So then I said, what if I put the shower, cooktop, fridge on the driver's side, and then on the passenger side, I can do a stacked kennels. The problem was the gap between that wheel well and the door opening wasn't big enough to fit the kennels. So this idea came back in a little later, but it doesn't stay. So I went back to having two kennels and turned this into more of like a bench seat. So you faced the other side and it kind of became like a conversational spot so that the bed wasn't tied in. Again, no shower. So here's another design where I have the seat up front. There's a little wall so I can have an attached monitor. Might do it from the wall. Kind of debating whether or not I want to put a window here. But here's a shower, and then here's storage space. And then here's another one where I put the galley on the driver's side. So cooktops, here's the built-in fridge. Because remember, I kind of want a fridge at eye height. I just don't want to keep bending down low into it. Personal preference, but I think I might end up giving up on that. Storage, and then on the driver's side, I'll put some sort of desk or anything. And then I have, various iterations of galleys on the passenger side. Here's all the different designs I've gone through, some of the ideas, some of the different thought processes. If you have any opinions or ideas, let me know. But now I kind of want to take you through a tour of the design that I've landed on at the moment. So let me get this cleared out and I will show you my final design. And here it is. This is the design that I'm going with as of January 11th of 2024. That's weird. So to walk you through it real quick, here is the back side. So on this side, I'm putting my water and I'm going with 33 gallons. And then on this side, I'll put the electrical equipment. I think I'm gonna go with the EcoFlow system. Then I've got my bed resting directly on top of it, and there is a gap here. It's not huge, but what I think I can do is get a drawer that will go from the floor all the way kind of into the area where I can put my various guns in there, slide it in from the back, lock it, and then it's pretty secure. It's kind of like a secondary protection, and then I can do storage on top of it. I might be able to build a kennel in. I might be able to slim the electrical cabinet up a little bit. There's some things that I kind of have to play around with as I get the equipment in. But this is what everybody actually wants to see. Here's the front of it. So, quick walkthrough. Here is the shower / wet dry room and toilet storage and additional closet space, etc. Here I'm going to put the sinks and cooktop. I'm not sure what I'm going to go with just yet, but anyway. And I'm giving up on the fridge at eye level. It just I was really fighting for it and I didn't need to. So it'll live down here, and then below the sink I'll have some storage for pots, pans, cleaning supplies, etc. And then I'm gonna do upper cabinets here. I just haven't decided how far. And then over here is just gonna be kind of light storage. It's not very deep because this has to clear the water tank and water pump, heater, all of those kind of things. So it's kind of like a half depth cabinet. On this side, and this is kind of where the design is pending, is this is going to be a desk. And I have space here to sit and, put a chair. I just don't know how the chair will work, how close it'll feel in this little galley kind of being tied in. But this is going to be a wall, so I can mount a monitor to it, so I have an additional large screen. And then when I'm laying in bed, I can watch that monitor as a TV. And then right here, this will be a seated cushion area, and then it'll lift open and there will be more storage in there. And then this is obviously the entryway into the van. The kind of big selling point on this is it kind of feels very open. It gives the desk a very dedicated spot. And should I actually find a girlfriend, fiance, wife in the near future, I can easily just make the bed extended and I don't have to really worry about things for when she wants to travel with me. But at the moment, I don't need to take up that space. So I can kind of make it a little flexible in the future. But for now, this works for me. So it took a while to get us here. I know this was a bit long video, but I kind of wanted to walk you through my troubleshooting steps on how I got my requirements, worked through the problem, and then ended up some compromises, but not a ton, I don't think. That all being said, I have ordered the extruded aluminum to start building this whole kind of back cage area. I've also ordered the water tank, so that should get here shortly. And I've ordered a bunch of different tools. So in the next video, I will go over kind of the makeshift workshop that I'm making in the garage and getting ready to start the build, and then we will kind of talk through the process of getting this whole section started and the benefit of extruded aluminum and why I went with that over any other method. So I appreciate you kind of watching this long-winded kind of deep dive into my design process and troubleshooting. Hopefully you can see how 3D printing could help you design your projects. I know when I originally got a 3D printer, I wasn't sure of the use case, and now I have 2 of them, and I absolutely loved this whole process. So, as always, if you found some value in this video, give it a like. If you've got any comments on the different designs that I've put through or thoughts on how I could maximize space and add more functionality, please let me know below. I'm still early enough in the process to do something with that knowledge. And as always, I will see you around the bend. Thanks for watching.